you get a call, oh, the pipe's frozen, and well, I'll just see if it'll thaw back out. That's a horrible plan, because odds are it's going to just keep getting colder in there. The water's going to keep expanding, and then your pipe's going to burst, and now you're going to have water everywhere and people that want to move out and a big repair to do, whereas you could have just hopped on it, got a plumber out there with one of those electrical machines and fixed it and thought it yourself.
I'm Drew Breneman, and this is the Rise and Invest podcast. I bought my first 2 properties as a 19-year-old with my own money that I earned from an online business I started in high school. I've now grown my portfolio from that first duplex to hundreds of millions of dollars of investment property. My goal with this show is to give you the resource I wanted when I first started out. Subscribe to our podcast, where I break down real-life stories, tactics, strategies, and current market information you need to be a successful investor.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. First episode of 2023. Happy New Year, everybody. Wanted to get on here and do really just like a topical solo episode and talk about cold weather, what to do when you have a big snowstorm, or really more about the cold weather coming. This is top of mind for all owners if you're in the Midwest or Northeast or anywhere where we just experienced this really crazy cold weather. It seems like every year or two we have a like once in 100-year kind of weather event, so just almost becoming something you need to know and prepare ahead of time for. So I mean, really, this kind of stuff, this is sort of nuts and bolts what I spend a lot of time on, and a lot of other investors, owners do as well. So I think if you don't want to spend time doing this sort of stuff and you just want to make money in real estate, I mean, this is why we started our company, really. So you can go to Breneman.com and invest with us as a passive investor in our deals, and then you don't have to really worry about any of this stuff. But for everybody else who's got their own deals or would like to someday, or is in property management, I mean, this episode's for you. So I think firstly, like what I like to think about is sort of what can you do to prepare ahead of time? So really, I guess the main thing to talk about with cold weather is the heat going out and pipes freezing. And pipes can freeze without the heat going out. I've had pipes freeze. This is a dozen plus times now. I have about 30 assets, so things will go wrong. And what I like to do, though, when I do have a pipe freeze or a heat issue, I go back and actually fix it, because I don't want to be going around for the rest of my life, where when the weather turns cold, that I'm going to be dealing with as a constant recurring issue. But we still have some that pop up, new issues in new buildings we buy, and then we see this happen. So here's sort of our playbook, if you will, on what we do when cold weather comes. So really, the first thing that you want to do is you want to be ahead of the game. So what I like to do is once or twice, or really every other year or once a year, you want to get your furnace tuned up, and that could mean a couple different things depending on how old your furnace is. For most of the furnaces that I have, I don't do a full tune-up with a HVAC company. I've just sort of personally, it seems like they charge, let's call it, if you're doing them in bulk, about $70 each, but they don't really, they're not doing much when they go there. They start, you send them to a building with 30 units. They start out, doing the first couple really hard and doing really well. And then they sort of, they're just like changing filters and making sure that they work by the end. So what we typically do is we'll send our maintenance guy through every year before winter, and we'll have him replace the thermostat batteries and then also change the furnace filters. So I don't know why, but it's unfortunately some of these thermostats where they're just battery powered, where they like nicer ones like the Nest, those are hardwired for power, so there's no battery, or if there a battery in there, it's just purely for backup purposes. But a lot of these thermostats are just fully controlled by batteries, so you're relying on 2 AA batteries essentially, or whatever it's going to be, to have your heat work or not. So that's something you want to stay on top of. And then also the furnace filters. So I know everybody, I think if you're a homeowner or you've even just rented before, you should know what a furnace filter is. But there's a filter that's in your furnace, and then those are usually on a tray that slide out, or there's a slot between the air return and the furnace where you can put a filter in. And also, too, if there is both of those, you don't want to put two in. So I did that when I first started out a couple times, where I saw, hey, I can put one here in the furnace where they have this little tray thing, and then there's also a slot on by the by where the air gets pulled in. So you don't want to do that. You just want to do either or. You don't. If you run it through two filters, or if you buy those filters that are those ones for pollen removal, or the really really nice filters, those work your furnace or air conditioner too hard, and so it has to exert too much, let's call it, effort to pull the air through the furnace. So then you're more likely to have issues with your furnace, or also with the air conditioner in the summer, because they're working harder than they need to. So the filters that I buy are just the cheapest possible ones you can get, where all you need is those. Usually they're like those blue or green fiberglass ones that are $1 or $2 at Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, wherever, just whatever big box or hardware store you got. They're actually hard to find online because they're so cheap. There's not any real money to be made probably in reselling those, since they're just like $1, and then you got to be shipping a large box around. But so those are the ones that we use, because we don't. The idea is to get the large particles or particles out to protect the furnace, the furnace, if you're or the air conditioning coil, as the property owner. But I'm not, I'd rather have my equipment working less hard than worry about what the pollen count is in the unit, or dust, or whatever those other nicer filters are for. So that, sort of step one is sort of before any of this happens. You want to be doing that every winter. And then obviously if there's an issue, you want to run so you can have your maintenance person go through batteries, filter, run the heat, make sure it's working, there's not any obvious issue. And then, you're good for the winter. So I live in Chicago. We just had minus 41 as the lowest temperature that we hit with the wind chill. So we heard that was coming, on December 23rd or 24th, whatever day that was, when it hit. So then ahead of that, what you want to do is you want to start communicating with your residents. So what we did is we emailed the building, and really in when you email your tenants, what you want to do is cover some things that seem like they would be obvious. So they're just not. I had my first deals that started out with student rentals, and I would be the stuff you would explain, you'd be surprised how simple it is, but I still just kind of carry that through. So the email that I like to get sent out is, firstly, you just want to ask if anyone's having any heat issues. So it's saying, we have cold weather coming, and you got to keep this brief. People aren't going to read that hard. And then also bullet points, a lot easier to read. So are there any heat issues? Ask that. You'll be surprised. We get emails back, and it'll be like, yeah, this hasn't worked, and I was just kind of wondering if it would turn back on eventually. And if it's going to be minus 40, it's not really time to just kind of hope your furnace will start working again. So email, bullet point number 1, are there any issues with your heat or water currently? Then for what we need everybody to do is set your heat to 68 or 70 degrees. Pick a temperature that's kind of on the high side, because that's going to be the temperature that's just at the thermostat. That's not the whole unit. So, it's pretty common where there could be a 5+ degree differential from a thermostat to some bedroom or somewhere else that you keep a door closed, or for whatever reason isn't being heated or cooled as much as where the thermostat is. So I think ours said 70 degrees. So, bullet point number 2, keep your heat set at 72 degrees. And then if you're going out of town, we want you to leave the water dripping from your faucets. And anything that really, this didn't have this in the email, but really what you want to be worried about is anything where it's on an outside wall. That's where it's going to get the coldest. So if you have, like a bathroom that's in the middle of the building, you're not going to have any issues there. It's heated all around it. Where you have the issues is what's on the outside wall. So even for me, I think about what buildings do I have, kitchens or bathrooms that are there, and I want to pay more attention to those. But just to, I guess, back up on what's in the email, any heat issues, set your heat to 70 degrees. If you're going out of town, leave your water on like a slow trickle. I know everyone says a drip, but I feel like a drip's almost not enough. I go slow trickle, and then you want to set the temperature to something where it's not hot and it's not all the way cold. It needs to be in the middle because there's going to be two pipes, one for hot, one for cold. And so you want to get it where the temperature will draw water from both those pipes because either one could freeze or both. So if you leave your water on all the way hot, trickling, your cold pipe could freeze, and vice versa. If you have your cold water on, your hot water pipe will just be sitting there, could freeze. So, and then also, fourth bullet point, if you're going out of town, let us know. So then as the owner, you just kind of have tabs on like, okay, I know if I go to this building, these units are already empty. I should go check them out. Or if something, there's an issue in a nearby unit, let's say in the building, and the people that live upstairs or below they're not home, then you're going to want to go over there potentially, and when you're dealing with that issue, look at the other unit, see if they also have it. So those are what I like to keep in the email. And then the next thing to think about is if you're changing your communication method at all. Let's say, so this was Christmas coming up, and normally, it's pretty common for people these days to just text with their property manager, or text with their owner. Nobody really wants to make phone calls anymore. It just wants to text or email. But if, let's say, the person that you're texting is going to be out of town, they're on vacation, they're going to be somewhere for the holidays, you need to make it clear that like that's not how we're going to take the emergency requests right now. Like what you normally texted your property manager, they're not available, so we need you to only call this hotline we have or whatever your method is. So you need to make that clear, because otherwise you might have an issue, but they're so used to just emailing your support email or texting with their property manager. If someone's not looking at that, you're not gonna see the request. So we have for our Chicago buildings, it's like a hotline call center kind of thing set up with a company. So then we want to make sure the calls are going there, where we don't want to have emails, texts, work orders being put in that say like I have a flood, like we need you to call, so then the call center can handle it, or we can get it. So too, and then I've had so many of my just plans over the years wrecked. Just all sorts of stuff happened. I remember one time I was going to Asia, and I landed, turned my phone on, and it's the fire chief from the city of Madison in Wisconsin calling me, wants to talk to me about my building. So it's always because I have a lot of memorable things like that. One day I thought for once on a Friday was, I'm like, all my work's done. It's 2:00. I think I'm good for the week here, and that rarely happens for me. So it's memorable, and I literally get a phone call, the building's on fire. So that there's just always emergencies that come up. Luckily, that building had sprinklers, so that put it out. But then we had a flood and essentially a rebuild to deal with. So. But yeah, so that sort of, the email, that's sort of the prep work I put in with preparing the heating, the email we like to send out, and then just sort of personally, I just try to not plan too much. Or if I know there's already going to be bad weather, I'm banking on something happening and needing to be available. So, and then really too, what I like to do, the last couple things, this isn't an email, but just to prepare, this is sort of my biggest and best tip, I would say, besides the email, is I like to buy space heaters for every building. It's just kind of these small ones. We have one in the office here, so if you're watching, just nothing too crazy, just one of these residential ones you can get at any hardware store, big box store. You need to buy them ahead of time. Obviously, they're going to sell out, so I like to do this just in the fall or summer even. And I like to have 4 of them. The number I don't think is that important, but that's just what I landed on. Have 4 of them in the basement or attic or closet in the hallway at every building. And the reason for this, and that's why I said it's my sort of best tip, what's really common is you're going to there's so many emergencies, it's hard to get people to go to the property quickly. If you're an HVAC person and it's -40, like you're getting so many calls, you're prioritizing units where they have 0 heat potentially, not one where it's just not putting out enough. So the reason you want to get these heaters in the building is, let's say you get a call and okay, it's my furnace isn't working properly, the temperature, it's dropped to 62, I have it set on 75, it's not getting up to where I need it. So you go, okay, perfect. So when they call you, I'll call the HVAC company, but in the meantime, go down to the basement. This would be on the phone here. Go down to the basement. There's 4 heaters in a box. Go get those, bring them up to your unit, and then what? Just spread them out within your unit. Don't put them all in one room. You're going to pop your electrical breakers, and then so they're not going to give you the heat. You'll be back and forth between your breakers. So just spread them out in your unit, and then that set them on high. That'll help get the temperature up. And then while we're waiting to get the company out there, it's not a permanent solution, but it would just be like a really good Band-Aid that's sort of saved us quite a few times, because sometimes when things get really busy for them, I mean, it's like could be a 2-day wait for them to get to it, because you'll talk depends on the size of the company and your relationship. But there's been times where it's been a bit of a wait, or just like this, where we're getting people calling us on Christmas Eve with issues, and then the 26th was a holiday, so they don't the real work day is until the 27th for most people till they'll be fully working. So that's a really good Band-Aid sort of solution that I heard, and I've implemented that myself. It's been a real good solution. So and then the last thing that I like to do during this time is, ahead of time, I'll call all my HVAC vendors, plumbers, people. This really goes for places that are one person shops or small companies. If you're using a giant company, there's no point in calling the 24/7 HVAC company. Like, they're available at all times. But more, like one plumber we use who's really great, but it's just a guy. He, I see if he's available, so that I know, like, that'll be my first call. And sure enough, we had a pipe freeze. This was on Christmas Eve at one of our buildings. Is the same sort of scenario. I'm saying you want to get that email out to prevent, where Christmas Eve, it was like 7 o'clock. I see the work order come in via email. So again, not using the call center, and then through an email, or we use AppFolio. So then it's a maintenance request, not an email. And then I call her, and it had been like this all day. So like, we could have handled this in the morning when it was still still a work day. I think the 24th was I guess that was a Saturday, but it was would have been during normal, let's call it normal working hours. If it wasn't working at 9 in the morning, would have been better to call then. But we didn't get it till 7. But I called this plumber that I know, and he was available. He was eating dinner, wasn't at another job, and said, after I'm done eating, I'll head over. And then this is kind of to talk about what they actually do when they get to the property to thaw out a pipe. I guess it's important to note, like, if you have a frozen pipe, you don't want to just wait. I think obviously when water freezes, turns into ice, and it expands. So here, pipes are copper, and then if they expand enough, it's going to break the pipe, and then when that thaws out, you're going to have water everywhere. So you want to get to the frozen pipes as fast as possible in order to avoid having the pipe burst. So call the plumber. He's out there within 2 hours. And what a real plumber would have, a lot of people, they will thaw out a pipe with a torch, like a blowtorch, or a heat gun potentially. But the issue with those is you need to get to the exact spot that has the freeze. So if, let's say, it's in the middle of the wall somewhere, you need to cut the wall open, get to the pipe. But what any good plumber should have is, it's essentially like, it's a device where it almost looks like a car battery. It looks like a battery that you would jump a car with, almost, where it has 2 wires coming in and clamps. And so what you do is you hook up this thing, you clamp it to the pipe that's frozen, and you put 1 clamp on each side, so the freeze would be in the middle, and then you run the battery, and it sends electrical current through it, and then it unthaws the pipe. So I didn't know that existed for quite a while till doing this. I mean, I was probably 10 years in till I saw somebody do that. I would I didn't have that many frozen pipes, I'd say, early on, just as I acquired more assets, more properties I did. Um, and I was also using handyman more, I'd say, early on. But another thing that I've just sort of learned, especially for plumbing or electric, it's better just to go straight to the plumber or electrician. And so that's something that I wasn't doing early on either. I was using a handyman for everything, I'd say. Um, just they're cheaper per hour, but like this plumber, he charged 300 an hour, but he was only there for an hour. So a fee to get there and then 300 for the hour. And because he has all the right equipment and there's no damage, no nothing. You send a handyman, maybe he's cutting open your wall, and sure, he might be $30 an hour, but he'll be working in there for days on the rebuild. So you're not really saving anything. Sometimes not sending the best person. So, anyways, he's at the building, uses his device, and he thaws out the pipe with no issue. So then we, go and we figure out, okay, who in this building isn't. We text has a mass text to the building who's not home. For the holiday now in your apartment, we should go through and make sure no other units have issues. So we did that. I didn't think to send that text till after the plumber was done. So then at Christmas morning, I ran through 4 of these units where nobody was home. And sure enough, like it never fails, there were issues in really in all of the units, something, but 2 of them had kind of bigger issues. Like one of them in the kitchen, the cold water was shut off. So, it's more than just, if you go to check a unit too, it's more than just going and I ran the water, I looked around. Like I'm running the water in the sink and I'm not getting cold water. Actually, I'm in the kitchen and I'm only getting hot, which, obviously, like I said, there's a hot and a cold water pipe. So I know something's up. So I go under the sink and I play with the shutoff and I go, oh, okay, actually this cold is all the way off. So then this pipe, no water's been running through it. Like when I realized that, I'm like, geez, this is probably definitely frozen if the unit below it had a frozen pipe and they haven't ran any water ever through this cold pipe essentially since it's been frozen. Or sorry, not frozen, since it's been turned off. So I turned it back. I turn the shut off to the on position and I run the cold water and it's fine. So some sort of fluke thing in the unit below that we're going to look into when the weather's better on why that pipe would have froze. You want to go through and check things carefully. Like I ran the sink, but then if I would have just gone quickly and gone, oh, okay, this has water, I'm done. Like I'm running it intentionally, going, I want to get cold, I want to get hot water, and then I want to leave it in that middle position I was talking about on a trickle. Also, if it's on an outside wall, the line to the dishwasher can freeze. That's happened where sometimes they run like a plastic type line, rubber hose kind of water line within the unit, like under the sink. Like that would be, that's not going to freeze. That's in the cabinet. But some places they're going to have a dedicated water line to your refrigerator or to your dishwasher. And if those can definitely freeze if that wall's cold. So I noticed that was a situation in these units. So then I also ran the dishwasher, get some water moving through that pipe as well before I left, and went on to the next unit. And then sure enough, one of the next units I went to, the walk in there and it's 50 degrees. And so you look at the thermostat, just says battery low, and you can't touch any, and nothing's working. So went and found 2 AA batteries and then popped them in and got the heat back on. But it was 50 degrees in there. So it would have been, who knows, that would have been our next issue. So that's why communicating with the tenants is important and being proactive, where we asked who's not home, then we went in to check because the weather got a lot worse than I think anyone was probably banking on, prepared for. So really those are sort of my hot tips, I guess, cold tips. But yeah, so this kind of, you want to be proactive ahead of time, get your heaters in your basement, talk to your vendors, check your filters and your batteries and your furnaces in the fall ahead of time. And then you want to be proactive with the communication. So you'd be surprised what people think with how, like I've had it happen where people go out of town and I'm just turning my heat off. I'm gone. I don't need it. And so you need to be sending out that email saying, even if you're gone, you need to leave your heat on. It needs to be set to this temperature. It needs to be this higher number, like 70 degrees, because that's temperature just at that thermostat. It's not across your whole unit 70. So on that wall in the kitchen at that one building I'm talking about, it wasn't 70 degrees in the kitchen inside that wall. Obviously, it was way, way colder if their pipe's freezing. So you want to do all that and then be proactive and not be afraid to actually go to your buildings and check things out. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to do that than be worrying about things or sitting back being not proactive at all and just sort of waiting till something you get a call, oh, the pipe's frozen, and well, I'll just see if it'll thaw back out. That's a horrible plan, because odds are it's going to just keep getting colder in there. The water's going to keep expanding, and then your pipe's going to burst, and now you're going to have water everywhere and people that want to move out and a big repair to do, whereas you could have just hopped on it, got a plumber out there with one of those electrical machines and fixed it and thawed it yourself. So over the years, I bought like quite a bit of just sort of little equipment just with issues. It was like blower fans to dry things out and a shop vac to get water pulled up. No, it's just inevitable part of the business. And I think maybe the next thing I'll need to add to my collection is one of those machines myself, where either I can do it or we'd have it available for a maintenance person, where if there's no plumbers that can get there, where this didn't seem too hard to use, almost like jumping a car. You just get it on each end of the pipe and turn it on. So anyways, hope everyone had a happy new year. And then that's what we got for tips on how to prepare for cold weather and deal with frozen pipes. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
If you learned something from today's show, please leave a review and hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcast. Dive deeper into real estate investing on Breneman Capital's website, Breneman.com, where we have numerous free resources and information that can help both active and passive real estate investors. Accredited investors can also get started today as a passive investor in our multifamily investment opportunities by hitting the Invest Now button on our website.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of Drew Breneman and guests as of the date of recording and do not purport to reflect the views or opinions of Rise Invest Holdings LLC and its subsidiaries. The views and opinions are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon or deemed as investment or tax advice or an offer to buy or sell securities, and the speaker cannot be held responsible for any direct or incidental loss incurred by applying any of the information offered.